Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Monthly Show. I really enjoyed this. I always look forward to speaking to Bitcoin Q&A, and I always learn something. I hope you learned something as well. We had a lot to cover, so I'll dive straight in after the adverts. First, I want to say thank you to CoinFloor UK for sponsoring the show. I tell you every week, if you can, buy no KYC or mine. But if you're not going to, and I know most people are not going to, then make sure that you use the best exchange out there. And I genuinely mean this when I say I think these guys are the best option out there. They also audit their supply so that you know that things aren't being rehypothecated, and they have a fantastic team. So if you're going to go the KYC route, then make sure you use the best. If you're going to use the best, use CoinFloor UK. And the link in the show notes will give you 30% off if you're averaging in, if you're buying weekly or monthly. So make sure to use that, and it also helps me sponsor the show. Next up are my new sponsors, Crypto Cloaks. If you haven't already checked out their website, I genuinely don't know what you're doing in your life. It's cryptocloaks.com. Go and have a look. I'm waiting for some incredible stuff that I've ordered. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. And I know that Bitcoin Q&A is also a fan. I think I'm right in saying that he's ordered a Poseidon. If you haven't seen these things, go and check one out. They're fucking cool. I think you can have 5 Raspberry Pis in it and 4 SSDs. It's like a little server housing basically, so you can run everything you need in there. Yeah, really, really cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you learn as much as I have, and if you have any feedback or any other questions, then do reach out to me or Bitcoin Q&A, and we will help if we can. Enjoy. Hello, mate. Nice to speak to you again.
Evening, Max. How we doing, mate?
Very, very well. Looking forward to a bit of a catch up here. I feel like I need this Bitcoin Monthly pod more than I ever have because I feel very behind. I've had a lot of other stuff going on, and I've sort of taken my foot off the gas for a couple of weeks with the updates, and I feel lost and blind, and all sorts of things are going on that I don't understand. So, yeah, looking forward to dive in.
Life has a habit of getting in the way of Bitcoin sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. How about you? How have you been?
Yeah, super busy. Lots on the go at the moment, a bit like yourself. Struggling to keep up. So, like you say, this podcast forces me to stay somewhat up to speed, and so we can have a brief chat about what's going on. It's tough to stay up to date, isn't it?
It's almost impossible, but it's a lot of fun trying.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of the challenge.
Yeah, so we've got some updates. I see at the top of the list for updates is Taproot. There's a lot that I'm seeing flying around on Twitter about this. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with the developments here?
Yeah, in short, a hell of a lot. It's something I've found difficult to keep up to date with, really. So I've done a bit of homework before we recorded, so hopefully I can give everybody listening a bit of a sort of TLDR as to what's going on. So Taproot obviously is a improvement proposal for Bitcoin. That there's been a bit of controversy over how it's going to be implemented. Bitcoin Core last month, just at the end of March, released a new client, Bitcoin Core. Should have had the number. That's terrible of me, isn't it? 0.2.1.1. which has in it what's known as speedy trial, which is the agreed upon trial period to hopefully get Taproot active on the network. The way it's going to work is from the most recent difficulty adjustment, which I believe happened probably 3 or 4 days ago, something like the 1st of May, I think. From that date, miners can now, when they mine a successful block, they can signal whether or not they are ready for Taproot. There's been quite a lot of people on Twitter that have been eagerly anticipating this one. And unfortunately, in the first couple of days, we have failed the first signaling block already. So the signaling block basically runs in tandem with each 2-week mining difficulty epoch. The way that it works with Taproot is that if 90% of the blocks mined within that 2-week window signal for Taproot, it's automatically active. It's deemed that a very high percentage, 90% of miners are ready. And that is sort of, in my opinion, the best way to go for it. Unfortunately, I think the time in between the difficulty adjustment and when the new Bitcoin Core client got released, most of the mining pools didn't really have a chance to upgrade their Bitcoin Core client. So we saw very, very low levels of signaling within the first difficulty epoch. We've already, even though we're only sort of less than a week in, we've already had too many blocks pass that didn't signal to be able to achieve it this time round. So within the parameters of the speedy trial, we've got 6, I think it's 5 or 6 difficulty epochs to get a successful launch of Taproot, to get that 90% threshold that we need. So all is not lost, and those, I think there's like 2 or 3 pools that have already signaled in the few blocks that have passed already since the difficulty adjustment. And I suppose the assumption is that if they've signaled once, the likelihood is that they're not going to stop signaling now. So it's just a case of hopefully the more the rest of the mining pools get on board, update their Bitcoin clients so that they can actually signal that they're ready for Taproot if they do mine a successful block. Does that make sense before I move on to the other client that's out there at the moment?
Couple of questions. Firstly, are you saying that we have 6 attempts where it's within a difficulty adjustment, so whatever it is, 2016 blocks or something like that?
Yeah.
And then they can come up 6 times. So we've got whatever that is. It's about 2 weeks each one, isn't it? So
yeah, that's right.
We've got a few months, and we have to get 90% plus of miners signaling
within that 2-week period. Yeah.
What percentage have we had so far of people signaling? Do you know a percentage, or?
I think it was quite low. It was like 5 or 10%.
Right.
But I don't think it was a true sort of representation because, like I say, because of the timing, the client came out after or just after the signaling sort of window opened. So I don't think the mining pools have had chance, or many of the mining pools have had chance to pull their finger out and get their Bitcoin Core client up to date to allow them to be able to signal.
Okay. And then the next question would be, what does it actually mean for a miner to signal? And how would they be doing this? Like, is it something that is literally a click of a button on their software and it broadcasts, it signals that, okay, we're happy to go ahead with this? Or is it something a little bit more complicated where potentially miners or mining pools are just like, oh, I can't be fucked with this? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, how difficult is it for them to do it?
Yeah, so the new client, the new Bitcoin Core client, basically, when they use that as their node reference client to mine, will now allow them, when they mine a successful block, to add in a little piece of information. I think it's called a bit number. And then basically, if they include that little piece of information, it's sort of etched into the blockchain when they mine that block successfully. And it basically just says, I am Slushpool, I'm ready for Taproot.
Okay, I'm with you. So it's not complicated for them to do it?
I don't think so, no. Obviously, I'm not a miner, not an expert, but my understanding is, I don't think it's too difficult. But I suppose with any software update, there is some risks. And if you're running a significantly big mining pool, you're probably going to be err on the side of caution a little bit, aren't you?
And then, okay, and then final question would be: is it from the individual miner, or is it from the pool that they join? For example, someone like Tarantula Hodl or someone like that, if they've got their miners running and say they're linked to a pool like Slush or someone like that, do they have choice on each individual miner that they're running, or is it literally the pool that determines it for the people who join the pool?
Yeah, it's the pool basically. It's whoever has final say to sort of publish the block to the blockchain. So using your example, yeah, if Tarantula's mining with Slush Pool, he's giving his hash towards their total effort, if you like, to mine a block. He's at the mercy of whatever they want to signal. But the good thing about that is that, say he is mining with Slush Pool and Slush Pool have indicated to everybody in their pool that they're not interested in Taproot, then he can just pull his hash power and point it to F2 pool if he knows that they are going to signal for Taproot, if that aligns with what he wants to do.
Okay.
So, and it's a good bit of game theory actually, because we saw, I think it was Slush Pool that actually mined the first block that did signal for Taproot. And they saw a massive jump in hash power from everybody that was potentially mining with a different pool that saw that Slush Pool was definitely game on for Taproot, and they pointed all of their miners at Slush Pool because it aligned with their ideals.
Very interesting. It's going to be fascinating to watch this over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah. So just to cap that off, basically, if we achieve that, which I believe we will, if I'm being honest, over the next 5 or 6 difficulty epochs, then what happens basically is Taproot is locked in and it would be active in Bitcoin Core for everybody else to use Taproot, the benefits of Taproot, which we can come on to in a minute. I think it's in November of this year. Hence the name Speedy Trial. If we get the 90% signaling within the 3-month period, it goes active in November. If we don't, it just times out and nothing happens.
Okay.
So that brings us on to the other client, known as, well, there's been, again, some controversy over the naming of it. I'm just going to call it the Luke Jr. client, because I know he's one of the people behind it, Luke Dash Jr. To start off with, these two clients are exactly the same. They're both active now. They're both looking for 90% of hash rate to trigger. If they see 90% of hash rate within that defined 2-week block, are signaling for Taproot, it's locked in. The difference is that the Luke Jr. client the signaling window runs until this time next year, basically. It runs until next summer. I think it might actually be next November. So it gives the miners a lot longer to signal for Taproot. The key difference is that if come next November, we still haven't got the 90% of miners signaling for Taproot, which is highly unlikely, if I'm being honest. That client then will start to reject any blocks that don't signal for Taproot, basically. So this is like going back to our previous podcast where we talked about lot equals true and lot equals false. Mm-hmm. This is essentially a lot equals true client that says, if after 18 months, miners, you're not interested in supporting the Taproot rules, we're just going to reject all of your blocks. So it's a little bit more, it's a user activated soft fork at the end of the day with a long timeout period. There's a signaling period of 18 months. So the difference between the two clients is Speedy Trial. If it fails, nothing happens, we stay the same. The Luke Jr. one, if it fails after 18 months, then that's when we start rejecting the blocks and saying, no, we want Taproot.
What's your feelings on this? Because to me, I don't like that. I think the forcing of something, even if it's something that I want, the forcing of something feels a bit anti-Bitcoin to me. It doesn't feel quite right, but I'm not a miner, and I'm certainly not Luke Jr., so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I think given the fact that it's such a big signaling window, I really don't think it's going to come to the fact that we're going to need to force anybody to do anything. If I was a betting man, I'd probably put a few sats on the fact that Speedy Trial is going to be successful. The miners will update their client and start signaling, because it's, other than some of the bike shedding in the background around some of the smaller parameters about how it's activated, Taproot is fairly uncontroversial. Most people, I've not met anybody that doesn't want Taproot. Most of the controversy seems to be around how we implement it. So I'm fairly confident, some might say naive, that Speedy Trial is going to work and that we'll probably have Taproot in November.
Okay, well, let's hope so.
Right, do we want to touch on quickly just some of the benefits that Taproot brings if and when it gets implemented?
Yeah, I actually think that would be really useful. It would be good to do it evenly. So the benefits, which it seems like there are quite a lot, but also if there are any negatives or could potentially be any negatives, it'd be interesting to hear those as well, just so we get a realistic picture of why some people might not signal a certain way or might have some reservations. Although, same as you, I've not heard anyone have an issue so far.
No, like I say, it's fairly from a physical change perspective, it's fairly uncontroversial. There isn't really any downsides to it, other than I suppose the risk of we've just sort of talked about at length the two implementations, and there is a very very small potential of a change split because we've got these two clients. Again, I don't think it's going to come to that, but that I suppose that's a risk with any soft fork. But other than that, I've not really heard of any downsides to Taproot. The main benefits, the sort of overall summary is that it enables a lot more complex scripting types to be implemented on top of Bitcoin. So most of which haven't actually been thought out yet. But what it does is it enables things like TapScript and a couple of other upgrades, which are far beyond my sort of level of expertise, to be honest with you. But it enables, I'm probably going to get some shit for this, but some Ethereum type smart contracts and functionality, but to be built on top of Bitcoin, which is a good thing for me.
It basically just makes it more flexible. You can do more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The one of the main ones that gets bandied around is that it's going to be good. It also introduces Schnorr signatures, which enables a couple of things. Number one, it's going to make multisig a lot more private on the blockchain. So currently, if you've got a multisig wallet, if you spend from that multisig wallet, it's blatantly obvious that it is a multisig spend. So we can also group into that any Lightning channel open or closes because they're essentially a 2 of 2 multisig and they stand out on the blockchain, which can provide some ins for chain surveillance firms to be able to sort of do some fingerprinting and tracking, which, as we have both waxed lyrical about before now, we don't like, and not many people that use Bitcoin do. So if we get, I'll be positive, when we get Taproot merged in, we get those Schnorr signatures. What that'll mean is that when you spend from a multisig wallet or you do a Lightning channel open or a Lightning channel close, that'll essentially just look like it'll look exactly the same as any other Taproot transaction. You won't be able to see that there is, say, 2 signatures to a transaction because you've got a 2 or 3 multisig. So it hides that, and basically it looks exactly the same as any other Taproot spend. So some quite big privacy benefits there. And the other one, it enables, but not straight away, it opens the door for cross-input signature aggregation, which is probably one of the biggest selling points for me, and a bit frustrating that it's not going to be. I think we're probably 2 or 3 years away from it, unfortunately. But we need Taproot for this. What cross-input signature aggregation is essentially, rather than, so let's use a coin join as an example. There's five different participants going into a Whirlpool transaction. Each one of those provides their own signature, and each one of those will have to pay a fee for providing that signature because it takes space on the blockchain. Mm-hmm. Well, once we get the cross-input signature aggregation, those 5 inputs will combine. The 5 signatures from each of the participants will be combined into one signature. So rather than paying for 5 sets of signatures on the blockchain, we're only paying for 1. And if you split that 1 fee across those 5 participants, you can see you get an exponential saving in transaction fees, which, like I say, is good for coin joins because they are inherently big transactions with lots of people taking part, but also provide savings for, like we touched on earlier, multi-sig users as well.
Okay. A few things I'm not quite sure on there. First would be, when you say that Schnorr signatures are going to be used, we're not going to use ECDSA anymore for security? Are we going to go to Schnorr? Or am I thinking of something else? Because a couple of years ago, there was a discussion about moving from ECDSA because something was no longer like patented, basically, and that it was cryptographically provable to be secure, whereas ECDSA is not. Or am I thinking of something completely different?
No, yeah, you're right. Basically, ECDSA is elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, and it's the method that Bitcoin uses for you to be able to provide a signature to prove that you own a specific input, but it also allows me to verify that you are the correct owner of that key without me being able to see that private key, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can see it one way, but not the other.
Exactly. Yeah. So Schnorr signatures are basically going to be a replacement for that. So if you start to use Taproot, a wallet that supports Taproot, yes, you'll be using Schnorr signatures, which provide they're in terms of bytes, they're smaller, which again comes back to some fee savings. I think the actual signature size itself from ECDSA to Schnorr is fairly marginal, but I suppose when we're talking in terms of bytes, every little helps, I suppose. Once you start mounting that up over multiple signatures or multiple transactions, the savings will add up. And I suppose it's less pressure, it's less transaction size on the blockchain as well. So hopefully it should reduce even marginally some blockchain fees for everybody.
And security-wise, although ECDS says it seems like it's obviously been fine, what I had heard, this is years ago now, is that this is provable, whereas ECDSA is not, and therefore technically it should be more secure. Is that right?
If I'm being honest, I don't know. I've not heard about that one.
Okay. Well, if anyone listening knows, maybe you can reach out and tell me. But I'm sure that's what I had heard. And then the final question I had on all of that is with this cross input
signature aggregation. Yeah.
So with that, if you're having 5 people or 5 inputs into a coin join, are you saying that effectively it would not only help with the fees, but it would help with privacy because you'd have 5 different inputs that would all be signed as one transaction, and therefore you wouldn't know who owns those original signatures? Or is it just that it's going to save on fees but not actually increase the privacy?
Yeah, it's just a fee thing because you can't hide outputs on the blockchain because it's essentially a UTXO that you're spending. So it doesn't hide the fact that there's 5 people going in and 5 people coming out. What it does do is it incentivizes people to participate in coin joins, because if you're just spending to me and you've got 2 inputs, you're spending 1 input to me, you're just doing a single UTXO spend, you're footing all of the bill for that 1 signature, aren't you, to spend to me? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're taking part in a coin join that spends to me as well, and you're sharing that 1 signature fee with 2, 3, 4 other people, it's actually cheaper for you to do that than it is for you to pay me directly.
So it incentivizes privacy.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's really so. Mm-hmm. And so if this say in the next, I don't know, 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever, this happens, this goes through 90% of miners signal. Does that mean that, right, this is now working, or does that just mean that it opens the door for people to develop something so that this can work? Yeah, so it would be. I just want to clarify as well that the cross-input signature aggregation that we spoke about isn't part of this first Taproot release, and I don't even think it's being actively developed at the moment. It was spoke about for a couple of years, and I believe that it's quite a big change to implement. So, if at best we're probably a couple of years away from it, unfortunately. That's a shame.
You still get the key aggregation, just not the cross input stuff. So the people using multisig or Lightning will get a bit of benefit, but the main benefits from my perspective around the privacy stuff for coin joins is a way out. So to answer your question, if Speedy Trial is successful and it goes live, that just means then that anybody running the Bitcoin Core client if anybody's running either of those, because the miner signaling is being watched for on both clients, it will just mean that those nodes will accept blocks that contain Taproot outputs. But for me and you, that's not going to change straight away, because what it means is that the wallet clients that we use would need to implement it as well and have it available to use in their UI, which I'm sure is probably going to take a fair bit longer than November.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I take from that is there doesn't seem to be a lot of downside. If it is implemented, it won't do a lot out the gate. We won't really notice many changes as a user out the gate, but it opens the door for developments that could be very helpful for fees and for privacy. And so it would be a big win, but we'd sort of still be waiting a little bit of time.
Yeah, nail on the head there. Perfect summary.
Fine. Cool.
Cool. All right. Next one. Where are we? Bitcoin Explorer. Now, I said this on Twitter, and I think this Bitcoin RPC Explorer is, it is what it says on the tin. It's an Explorer that comes packaged with, I think, literally every single node package on the market today. And I feel like it's a bit of an unsung hero in the fact that what it enables people to do. So it's basically, it allows you to query your own node via basically a website that's produced by your node. So you can access it either if you're on your home network, or if your node package allows it, you can access it via Tor from anywhere in the world. And it gives you the status of your node, mempool stats. You can look through historical blocks. You can see what the hash rate's like. You can see all sorts. You can run RPC commands. So you can use the infamous gettx outset info, which allows you to verify the supply, and it just wraps it all up into a nice shiny web interface. And I think a lot of people don't really give it the credit it deserves, and it's had an update this month that's just introduced some new support for prune nodes, a new dark theme, and just basically polished up the user interface. But I just wanted to throw it in there just to bring it to people's attention again. But the chances are, if you're running a node, if you have a look into the settings, there probably is a Bitcoin RPC Explorer floating around in there somewhere. And it's quite a powerful tool really, that you can use to get all sorts of various Bitcoin related info without having to query somebody else's node. I don't know whether you're a bit like me, Max, and you run far too many nodes. Is this one you've used before?
No, I think I've maybe seen it on my node, possibly as an option, but I haven't used it, to be honest. And like I said to you yesterday, being honest to everyone who is listening, I'm running a lot of nodes, but all of them, other than my Raspberry Blitz at the moment, are fucked. I can't send transactions. I can't do anything. I threw a bit of a wobbly yesterday, threw all my toys out the pram. I'm like, fuck it, I'm not even running these anymore. I'm going to give up. And today I've come back a stronger man, and I'm going to try and tackle them and wrap my head around it again, because it needs to be done. But no, I haven't, but I think I've seen it on my node.
I've just sent you the link in the chat. It's come out really weird for some reason. You'll have to sort of fish out the for everybody listening. You can see, no, it's on the Zencaster. For everybody listening, if you go to, you can see an example of this. It's like a public one at bitcoinexplorer.org. And that looks identical to how it would on your node, but obviously it's querying somebody else's node, basically. But if you want to go and have a little play around with it and see what sort of stuff it offers, it's a really, really powerful tool. And if you're running a node, have a poke around. I can always guarantee it's going to be there.
That has come out really weird in that. Yeah, I'm just trying to sift through it. That's the weirdest link I've ever seen. I'm on it now. Okay. Yeah, I'm on it now. So this is it's already got the dark theme on there. When I've gone on it. Cool. Okay. Latest blocks. Interesting. No, I've not used it before, but it looks good actually.
It's really good. If you think of it like mempool.space, but with 10 times more info on it as well.
Cool.
So really good one. Check it out. bitcoinexplorer.org. Moving on to more Twitter drama. You're laughing because you just see what's there.
I've just seen what's there. Yeah.
So Bisq, a tool to buy KYC, no KYC Bitcoin, or other currencies as well, has announced this week that they're going to add Lightning as one of the options for a base layer, which caused a bit of a stir amongst some on Twitter. I think it probably wasn't communicated all that well. I personally saw the tweet and thought that they were ditching Bitcoin basically, and that Bisq was going to be solely a liquid product. So you would go on, you would need liquid as your sort of base currency to then go and do whatever you needed to do, which I thought was a bit strange. Anyway, it's been clarified now that they're going to have two clients, or at least an option within one client to switch between liquid as your base currency and Bitcoin. Now, I can sympathise with why they might want to do this. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan at all of liquid. Perhaps we can get into that later if you want to. But like I say, I can sympathise with their push to look for an alternative in terms of managing fees for users. The problem is, at the moment, a Bisq transaction actually consists of 4 on-chain transactions. Now, we've been pretty lucky. We're recording on the 3rd of May, and in the last couple of days, I think the average fee rate's been something like 7 or 8 sats per byte. And I think as low as 4 or 5 has been getting confirmed into blocks as well. So previous to that, sort of earlier in April, we did see some quite sky high fee rates of 200 sats per byte, which if you're having to do that 4 times, that's going to start mounting up. And it's going to start pricing out some of the smaller trades. You know, if you wanted to go onto Bisq and buy $100 or $200 or pounds worth of Bitcoin, you're not going to be left with as much as you would like at the end of that. So just to sort of flesh that out for those that haven't used Bisq, the reason it's 4 transactions is the buyer needs to put in a deposit to their Bisq account. So they need to already have some Bitcoin and they need to send that to their Bisq wallet. The seller also needs to do the same. So there's 2 transactions. Once the trade is initiated, the seller would then need to send their Bitcoin that they're selling into an escrow account where it's held so that they can't scam anybody. And then the buyer would send over their fiat via whatever method they've chosen. So if it's bank transfer, cash or whatever. And then, so that's 3 transactions. And then the 4th transaction is the buyer transferring it out from the escrow to their Bisq wallet. And I suppose then if they wanted to take that out of Bisq and put it into cold storage, it's another transaction again.
Another one.
So you can see why at sort of 100 plus sats per byte, that's, you know, it's going to mount up. But I suppose the total transactions is split between the 2 people, isn't it? But even so, it's still a significant amount of fees.
It is a lot because on top of that, when we've discussed it before, I use Bisq a lot. The average amount that I see in terms of above market price is probably 5-6% on average in the UK. And then you've got your fees to send the money into Bisq, those 4 transactions, 5 if you take it off as well, plus I can't remember what it is, 0.25% or something you pay to Bisq. It all adds up, and like you say, for a small transaction, which is generally what seems to be available, more is like the smaller ones. Yeah, it is going to put people off.
Definitely. So, like I said, to tie it back, I can see why they're looking to other options. I think the uproar was initially around the fact that people thought they were completely ditching Bitcoin. It transpires that they're not. It transpires that there's going to be 2 different markets now. Whether that sort of splits an already low liquidity pool into 2 further pools, you know, the Bisq, the original Bitcoin Bisq, if you like, and then the liquid Bisq. What that impact that's going to have to the liquidity for people wanting to buy and sell on there, I don't know. I suppose time will tell. What's your thoughts on that one?
I like Bisq. I've used it for a long time. I've tried to get a lot of people to use it. I don't know enough about liquid to fully understand the trade-offs, but from the little I do understand, you are trusting more than you would with Bitcoin. And trade-offs wise, I personally prefer Lightning to liquid if I'm looking at something as like a second layer. I understand why they're doing it with the fees. I get that. And you know, all these fees and all these things add up, and they make it more difficult for people to wrap their head around no KYC Bitcoin. Many people are just not going to be willing to pay those fees. So I get why they're doing it. I also don't know enough about liquid, but I don't really like it from what I do understand. So it doesn't excite me. It also doesn't really piss me off. But I am seeing a lot of back and forth on Twitter about it. I don't know. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. It doesn't really massively upset me, but I'm certainly not happy to see Liquid. If they'd said something like, "Oh, we can do it with Lightning," I'd probably be a bit happier.
Yeah, I think the difficulty with Lightning is obviously how do you do that escrow so that the reason it's there is to protect both the buyer and the seller. You haven't got that functionality in Lightning, to my knowledge, at the moment.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, because of the escrow bit, so it'd have to come off Lightning and then into Bitcoin. Is there not a way of doing some kind of escrow with Lightning?
If there is, I'm not aware of it, and I would imagine if it is possible, somebody's already exploring it, but I've certainly not heard it mentioned at the moment. But hey, you never know. Taproot might open up the door for that to happen. Who knows?
Yeah, with like you're saying, if it's more flexible and you could have some kind of smart contract that would allow for it. Because the other thing, what I'm seeing all over Twitter at the moment is spilling over from the Bisq stuff to the Monero stuff, and there's this massive arguments all going on all over the place, and it's all I'm seeing. My thought is, well, it could have some kind of smart contract and they could have some kind of escrow service, then potentially that could be used on some of these darknet markets as well. I can't see why you couldn't use something like Samurai, go through Whirlpool, then open a channel to Lightning, then use Lightning if it had an escrow service on the darknet markets, because some of the people purchasing small amounts of things on there, the same thing, they're going to have the same problem with fees.
Yeah, I think the top and bottom of it with darknet markets is nobody's using Bitcoin on there anymore.
Which is crazy. It's fucking that's a massive market.
I think it says a lot about the current state of Bitcoin's privacy, though, unfortunately. I don't frequent darknet markets, but I talk to people who do regularly, and it's all Monero. It's become the default.
Yeah.
So I think it says about a lot about what sort of people who really, really value and need privacy for reasons that are fairly obvious are simply not using Bitcoin.
Some people will sit and make the argument, they go, oh, we shouldn't be using those markets. Well, for people like that, firstly, fuck off. It should be free. People can do what they want. And secondly, if those people can't be secure and comfortable using Bitcoin, it also means that people in terrible governments and people who really seriously need this, and all the chat that goes around of people, saying, oh, we're going to change the world. We're going to allow people all around the world in third world countries to have freedom. They say it. Well, if they actually meant it, then they'd care about privacy. So to me, if they're not caring about privacy and they're banging on about all that stuff, they're just talking shit. They're just virtue signaling, because if they are not using it on darknet markets, then I'm pretty sure people who have governments who would either imprison or kill them for using it, they certainly won't be using it either. And then where are we? Like, what are we doing? What are we here for?
Yeah, quite right. You hit the nail on the head there. I think just to tie into that, the more Twitter drama. The Samurai team announced a couple of days ago that they've given a grant to a recent fork of Bisq called, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's either Haveno or Havino.
Yeah.
And basically, previously around 80% of Bisq volume was Monero. And I think a growing group of Monero guys got frustrated that there wasn't more of a focus on supporting Monero within Bisq. So whoever they are behind it have fought Monero, and the Samurai team have given them a grant. Obviously, it's quite clear that the people who value the privacy have their ideals aligned somewhat with the developers at Samurai. They've given them a grant to support the development of this Bisq clone that's using Monero as a base currency. And I think it's probably tied into the fact that the lead developers at Samurai are working on atomic swaps between Bitcoin and Monero, which caused a stir among some of the maximalists out there. So, but again, early days at the moment, but from what I can gather, it's going to be basically, Samurai will absolutely still be a Bitcoin wallet, but it'll have a functionality there that you can do an atomic swap into Monero. Probably a good option would be with your Docs exchange from initiating a Whirlpool mix. What you do with it after that is completely up to you. But the very little that I do know about Monero is that kind of once you're in, it's pretty difficult to follow you. So potentially a good use case there, but I said this on another podcast last week. I'm absolutely sort of ignorant to Monero and its pros and cons at the moment, but it just seemed apt to throw it in there, given that it's a fork of Bisq, and there's going to be some functionality to do some atomic swaps between the two chains, probably this year, I think.
The atomic swap stuff, really I find quite interesting, and yeah, it's going to annoy a lot of people, but from my understanding as well, Monero's privacy is very good with its ring signatures and all that kind of stuff that it has going on. And I have heard some people say, oh well, actually you can unwind it, you can track it. I think it was Chris Belcher, when I was speaking to him months ago, he was saying something along those lines, that it can be tracked. I don't fully understand it, but it seems it would be much harder. And so if there was to be atomic swaps possible, and you could do that, like you're saying, with toxic change or something like that, would it be possible then to change that into Monero, and then from Monero make, say, one transaction to another Monero wallet, and then peg back out so that you come back into Bitcoin, if that makes sense? So, and if that is the case, then is that the best tool that we have possible to break links?
Yeah, I mean, that approach you just described, I know people that do that already, but they do it through custodial methods. So the swap at the moment isn't of an atomic nature, so that there's trust involved. But what I know people do is that, the small bits of change that are too small to go into a pool, they'll send them into a Monero wallet that they've got over time. They'll accumulate it until it's up to, say, like 1 million sats, and then they'll send it back through the same custodian, the trusted third party, whoever it is that's offering the swap service, back into Bitcoin to a new address. And from what I'm told, again, I'm somewhat ignorant to it, to be honest. From what I'm told, that's it really good at breaking the transaction graph, and you come out the other side with basically enough to go back into Whirlpool.
If that's the case, and if we can have atomic swaps, would it be better to just do that fee-wise rather than go through coin joins? Because the fees, it's fairly expensive to do it. And from my understanding, Monero transactions are very cheap in comparison to Bitcoin. So would it not make sense for people just to do an atomic swap into Monero of whatever size they were going to coin join, do a hop or two, and then jump back out into Bitcoin again? Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think there's a couple of things to that. Is number one, you've still got amount correlation. So if you send 1 million sats out to Monero, and then a week later 1 million sats comes back, potentially be tracked from an amount correlation, probably be fairly difficult to do. The other risk as well is that obviously Bitcoin's proven itself to be a much better store of value than Monero. So I think, again, the little I know about Monero, that the more privacy you get, the longer you're in it. But the trade-off for that is if you leave some of your Bitcoin, if you swap some of your sats into Monero and then leave it there because it's the most private thing to do, then you're exposing yourself there to the exchange risk between the two. If Bitcoin goes through the roof and Monero goes the opposite way, then you've lost a lot of sats. So it's a trade-off again between what do you value more, your privacy or the potential of, your net worth going up again.
I completely get that. What I was more thinking is that you would just continuously, depending on the cost of this atomic swap, you would continuously take single UTXOs, bang them into Monero, and then immediately back out to a completely separate wallet, or that UTXO, fucking hell, Max. That UTXO goes into Monero from the atomic swap, and then you send it in 2 separate payments of random amounts, slightly apart from each other, to separate wallets, so that you would just do it as a continuous thing, and then you're not exposed to the volatility of Monero. Because I agree with you, like, I don't want to keep my money there, but I'm also not enough of a maximalist to say, well, if something's useful for my privacy, I'm not going to use it. So I kind of would see it like that, is that you could do it UTXO by UTXO on a continual basis. And maybe could something like that be programmed to do automatically, so that you would have it sat, say, in Samurai Wallet, and as fees drop, it would automatically do it for you, and you'd already put in your next wallet address for where you want it in Monero, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds logical to me. How that would be coded into the wallet, I've absolutely no idea. I'm sure it sounds pretty fucking complex to me.
I'll work on it tomorrow, mate. I got an hour.
There you go. But it sounds, in theory, like it would work. I'm sure there's probably people like Ergo or Max Tannehill listening to this going, "You absolutely fucking weirdos." There's a gaping hole in that thought process. Yeah. In theory, it sounds like it works, but I still don't think it negates the need for equal output coin joins or postmix tools. I think it just works in harmony as an extra tool, like you say.
Cool. Okay.
Right, next on the list, hot off the press. This one only dropped yesterday, so it's not actually in the April index that we're mainly talking about, but I thought it was worth dropping in there because it's quite a big one for most users. Blue Wallet's finally implemented Tor as, baked into the wallet. So that doesn't sound like a big thing, but if let me lay out the sort of process of what it gives you. So currently, if you're an iPhone user, you use Blue Wallet with your own node. The only option until now you had was to connect onto your local network, so you could only use it at home or wherever your node was located, or you had to rig up some sort of VPN so that you could tunnel yourself back to your home network where your node is to be able to contact it and operate Bitcoin fairly privately. If you used Android, you had to use a god-awful app called Orbot, which was basically like a Tor it's like a Tor proxy. It's an app that basically runs Tor on your phone, and you can add apps to it so that app runs through Tor. That enabled you then to connect remotely back through the Tor network to your node at home. So it worked, if I'm being honest. It was just Orbot was somewhat glitchy, if I'm being honest. So now they've implemented Tor as part of the app for both iOS and Android. So essentially, you would set your wallet up, go into the settings of the app, enter your Electrum server onion address, hit save, and now you can talk to your node without any extra apps, without any dicking about from anywhere in the world. So from a usability perspective, given that Blue Wallet is probably one of the fan favorites, particularly around newer users, it's a big win.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Where are we next? Okay, the guys at BTC Pay Server announced quite a big vulnerability disclosure this week with more than one vulnerability. Some of them, most of them, if I'm being honest, massively over my pay grade. The main one, and the first one that's listed on their sort of bug disclosure is basically, I'll read out the notes to do it justice. A malicious party could generate an email asking for a password reset to the victim. If the victim clicked on the link in the email, the target account could be taken over. So effectively, if users were vulnerable to basically a dodgy email, which would allow them to take over the account. And if you've got a hot wallet, which most BTC Pay servers do, especially if you want to use tools like PayJoin or Lightning, then you're going to have funds in there, and the private keys are going to be on that device, be it hosted in the cloud or on a VPS or even at home. So could have been potentially. They've hit the nail on the head there. They've classed it as critical. And if you're running the latest version of BTC Pay Server and you're already up to date, which I believe came out about a month ago, then you're already safe. The good thing is about bug disclosures is that most software updates, they hide the bug fix. They don't mention it, and then they'll release the disclosure like a month later after they know that most people have already updated. So if you're running the latest software, you've got nothing to worry about. If you're not, I'd urge you to update ASAP. Okay. C Lightning. So this is Blockstream's implementation of Lightning, probably one of the lesser used ones. I think it's more for the command line elites like Catan. They've released the beta version of dual funded channels. Dual funded channels, essentially, currently, should I say, if me and you wanted to open a channel, Max, it would either have to be me opening a channel to you, which would result in all of the liquidity of the channel being on my side, or vice versa, you opening one to me and you would have all of the liquidity to spend on your side. Well, now they've released the beta where two users can come together and fund from both ends of the channel. So that means that, well, number one, you can split the cost of the on-chain transaction to open it. And number two, it means that you've got an instantly balanced channel with no dicking around with, swap services or having to spend, and so you can receive.
That's cool.
Very cool. Yeah. So, and probably quite timely as well around, again, we're starting to see on-chain fees rising. So it's a good little trick really that's going to enable people to split that load and come out with a balanced channel at the end of it.
Very nice.
Right, next one. Cold Card Seed XOR. Have you seen this one? Do you know much about it?
A little bit from our chat with Rodolfo the other day, but I don't feel confident enough to really speak. I think I get the basics of it.
So give us the TLDR so I can have a drink if I'm gasping.
My understanding is that it would help be able to split seeds and be able to have some kind of plausible deniability. Rather than having one set of 24 words, you could have two, and then an attacker wouldn't know that actually you basically got it split, and you could put funds on a portion, or you could put a funds on both individually, but together they have the real amount. Could hide your amounts a little bit better. That's sort of what I got from it.
Yeah, basically that's the gist of it. The way I understand it is, so the problem they were trying to fix currently is that if you've got a seed plate with your seed on it, it's fairly obvious to most people that that's probably a Bitcoin backup, and that the seed, most metal backups don't hide anything, do they? It's your seed stamped into metal or punched into metal. It's obvious what it is, and if you entered that into a wallet software, you can see how much Bitcoin is in there. Obviously, you can mitigate that you should mitigate that by using a passphrase and storing that separately. So this seed XOR is a different approach, which, like you rightfully said, basically allows you to split your seed into two or more new seed phrases. So I'll try and use a working example. So let's say you've already got a cold card set up, you've already got a seed plate there, but it's a bit of a risk because you think, well, if anybody finds that, I'm up shit creek. Mm-hmm. So what you can do is there's a setting in the device now that you can go in and say, right, I want to split my seed into three pieces. Mm-hmm. It will then spit out 3 lots of seed words. So they're full bit39 seed words. So what you would then do is stamp those 3 seeds into more seed plates. So they look to the layman like it's just a seed, one plate equals 1 seed for 1 wallet. And they essentially are. You can load Bitcoin onto each one of them. But to get to your real Bitcoin wallet, you would need to input all 3 of them into your cold card or into a device that can read this seed XOR. Where that is, it's unclear to me at the moment, to get to your real wallet. So it, like you said, provides plausible deniability to, you would need all 3 of those seed plates together to get to your real wallet. If somebody was to find just number 1 of the seed plates, you might have put like 1 million sats on there. They think they've hit the jackpot because they found your Bitcoin. But in reality, they haven't found your real stash, which might have a full Bitcoin on it. Okay.
And can you put a passphrase on top of that as well?
I believe you can. It sounds as though we're getting into the realms of making shit too complex that you're going to lock yourself out of your Bitcoin, if I'm being honest.
So it's kind of like a multi-sig that's not a multi-sig. For example, let's just do it with mine. So I've got a cold card. Currently, it's got a passphrase and 24 words. If I was to use this new feature, then would it keep my original 24 words plus it would make me 2 more sets of 24 words, or would the original 24 words now be useless and I'd have 3 sets of 24 words that are brand new that I'd now have to restamp and then disperse geographically so that if someone found one, they find whatever, a few sats on there, but only when all 3 come together, then they can access?
Yeah, so it doesn't change anything to do with your original seed. That's still valid. The problem it's trying to overcome is that if anybody was to find that original seed plate that you've got stamped into metal and you didn't have a passphrase on it, they've got all your Bitcoin. Whereas if you were to destroy your original single seed plate backup for your current cold card wallet and split it into two using this XOR tool, then you would need either the cold card and you know the PIN number to get into it to spend your Bitcoin, or if you lost your cold card, you would need both of the seed plates that you just created combined into the XOR tool on the cold card to recreate your real wallet.
Okay. And it creates 3 always, or you can choose?
As many as you want.
Okay.
It's got to be at least 2, well, for obvious reasons, because it's trying to fix. But I don't think there is a limit as to how many you can do. But obviously, the more you add, the more complex it's making.
Could you make it so that you keep your original 20? Say you've taken the time, and it takes time to stamp this into a metal plate. Mm-hmm. Can you do it so that you keep that one, and you just now have an additional 24, or however many additional 24s you have?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could do it that way as well.
And that's really good. I actually really like that because it kind of solves a lot of issues that concern me. And like I do something that everyone tells me not to. Everyone is always like, that's fucking stupid, you should never do that. But I think it works, and I'm probably wrong.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Should I say it live or not?
Go on.
Go on. Okay, I'll say it. So I take my 24 words and a disgustingly long, awkward, fucking horrible passphrase that I don't even know myself without looking at it on the plate. And then I split my 24 words. So I have 12 on one plate, 12 on another plate, and then I have a disgusting passphrase, and they're in different parts. So only when they come together could I actually possibly sign, because I don't fucking know my words or my passphrase to do it. But everyone says that's really stupid. This would basically be that, but not splitting my 24 words. It would just be adding additional 24 words. Yeah,
so the only difference between your approach and this XOR tool is that if somebody was to find one of your 12-word plates, that wouldn't be a valid seed. So if they put it into a wallet, they would know that it's not a valid wallet because you won't have the checksum at the end. With this seed XOR, each one that it creates is a valid seed that you can load some Bitcoin onto to create some plausible deniability that if they find one, then they only find your, they don't find your real honeypot stash.
I really like that. I think that's a really fucking good idea.
It is, but if it's your only backup and you lose one, you lose everything.
True. Yeah,
but I suppose that's true. That's true of a single sig, just with just one seed plate, isn't it? If that's your only backup, you're fucked.
Yeah,
so it is a benefit.
You'd have to have multiple in multiple locations just in case, and have them stamped into steel and all that kind of stuff. It adds complexity. I get that, but
definitely,
it makes sense to me security wise. And actually, one question while we're on cold card and all this kind of stuff. One thing that I was thinking with if you can do that and have like your 24 words or 3 of those 24 words in separate locations and then a passphrase on top, would it not make sense to wipe the cold card that you've put all of those onto? If you're not, if it's proper cold storage, would it not make sense to wipe that and then keep that somewhere else, so that if someone was to ever find that, they don't just need your seed phrase, they would actually need the 3 lots of 24 words and your seed phrase, even if they had the physical device?
I'll be honest, I think you kind of lost me at the end. Where did the 3 lots of 24 words and your seed phrase come in?
So you use this seed XOR or XOR or whatever it's called. You create 3 lots of seed words, 24 words in one, 24 words in the second, 24 words in the third, and you have your passphrase. So they need 4 different things to access.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But if they were to find your cold card, which is in another location, if they find that and it's already set up so that all you have to then put in is the passphrase, they only need
the PIN. You mean
PIN and the passphrase?
And the passphrase, yeah.
So they would only need the PIN and the passphrase, not the PIN, the passphrase, and the other 3.
Correct.
24 words. So would it not make sense, if it's proper cold storage and if people are telling the truth when they say, look, this is for generational wealth, I'm not touching this, would it not make sense to then wipe the cold card and restore it back to factory so it doesn't have access without those other bits?
Yes, but you're putting all of your eggs in one basket then, aren't you? where you just have that backup that you've created. And if you lose one of those C plates, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked, yeah.
Whereas if you lose one of those C plates and you've still got your cold card that just needs your PIN that you know to get into it, you can spend out of that wallet and make up
as long as you've got the passphrase.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fine. It's a bit tinfoil hat. I get that.
It is, but it's worth thinking about for sure. And I think it adds to the fact that it makes sense to have multiple types of backups as well. As don't forget, the cold card does SD card backups as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The problem is with that is obviously that each one of those backups has a 12-word passphrase to unlock it as well, so that you've got to worry about looking after that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But I suppose, in hindsight, if you were to back up onto an SD card, keep that at your parents' house, and then literally just write down those 12 words, those 12 words only mean something to that SD card. The likelihood of somebody finding those 12 words and then going to your parents' house and finding an SD card and going, I wonder if I try and decrypt that SD card with these 12 words, is it going to do anything? It's unlikely, isn't it?
It's true. I mean, the main takeaway is that there's lots of different options, and that this just makes it more complex for an attack, and it allows this sort of diversion to happen where someone will go, "Haha, I've got your Bitcoin," so they think they've got it,
yeah,
and that gives you that deniability. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, right. Okay, a couple of quick ones just to touch on. Mynode and Raspberry Blitz have both added Lightning Terminal. Lightning Terminal is basically a browser-based interface that allows you to manage your Lightning channels. Probably a little bit more of a power user thing for people who are running routing nodes that do frequent channel rebalancing or swap loop-ins or loop-outs. It's basically a flashy user interface that allows you to do that away from the command line. I've not had a chance to use it yet. It looks pretty cool, but I just don't use Lightning often enough to. I've never had to rebalance a channel. That sort of tells you how infrequently I use Lightning, really. But I thought it was a good one to throw in. The Samurai guys have reduced the fee for their Ricochet feature. They've cut it in quite literally in half. It's down to 100,000 sats. So a quick TLDR on what Ricochet is it uses multiple hops when you send a transaction. Each hop is a new address within your wallet. Obviously, you wouldn't know that from on the blockchain, but it creates a transaction string of, I think it's 4 transactions, sequential one after the other, which, like I say, it adds a bit of distance from the activity that you've been doing in Samurai and your recipient. The likely use case for this is kind of when you're sending to an exchange, really. So say that you're sending to Cash App and they're renowned for looking back 3 hops into a transaction history to see if there's anything fishy going on. You might want to use Ricochet to add those hops so that you can sort of skirt around that sort of minimal level of chain surveillance. It's not a tool I've used because, well, number one, I don't sell Bitcoin, and number two, if I did, it wouldn't be through something like Cash App. But you had a chance to use Ricochet before, Max?
Again, I've had no need. I try not to ever sell any Bitcoin if I can help it. And if I was, it would be probably to you or someone I knew, or it would be to Bisq or Hodl or something like that. So I've not had any need, but I had a question on it, which is, what about the timing with it? Is it literally 4 addresses, bang, 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 and then straight on to the final one, which you're sending it to? Or is it sort of spread out timing wise? And is it spread out in terms of, it cuts it in half to 2 and then they go together as one? Or like, how does it work? Because it seems a bit obvious to me. It seems like if it's the same amount, just to 4 different addresses straight away and then onto an exchange. If they actually cared, they'd be like, well, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, there's 2 types of Ricochet. There's the standard Ricochet, which I believe just sends it quite sequential in the way you've just described. And then there's another one called staggered Ricochet, which leaves a little bit of time between each send. I'm not sure on the specifics of how much time it is.
Okay.
If you're going to use the Ricochet tool, probably a good idea to connect to the Samurai teams paying him first, because what that will enable you to do then is, rather than them take their fee in one lump sum, which again might give a little bit of a footprint on chain for somebody who's looking for that specific activity, they take their fee out at each hop. So that would work by differing the amounts that are being sent each time as well. And it just adds multiple more outputs along each hop as well. So rather than just being, like you say, spend, it's spend and change, where the change is their fee.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
So that's the better way to do it if you're going to use it. All right. Craig at Sparrow Wallet has added in support for child pays for parent transactions within the graphical interface. Again, we seem to be talking about fees quite a lot lately. Child pays for parent is essentially a method for boosting a transaction that you've got stuck in a mempool. The sort of summary of how it works basically. If say you're spending to me, Max, and you do a low ball fee, you're spending 1 million sats to me, and you got say 100,000 sats in change back to your wallet. The transaction's stuck in the mempool because there's been a fee spike. It's been sat there for 2 days. I'm getting, or let's say it's, you're spending to me and you're buying something off me. You're getting edgy now because you want whatever I'm selling you. So you want to boost that transaction. So what you can do then is take that change output that you've got that's 100,000 sats that's still unconfirmed because it's part of that transaction, and you can spend that to a new address within your own wallet. So that creates what's known as a child transaction. When you create that child transaction, you do so at quite a high fee. And what that does then is when you broadcast it, to the high fee obviously entices the miners to want to include that transaction in a block. But to do that, they have to include the parent transaction, which was you paying me that 1 million sats. So it just provides a bit of an incentive for the miners to say, you're dangling a carrot basically to say, look, you can have all these fees off this child transaction if you include my parent transaction as well, and they can't do one without the other. So it's a good option really to if you've got a transaction stuck. Obviously, you could only do that if you had a change output. If you spent the entirety of a UTXO to me, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, I weirdly was talking about this to my missus because I'm really romantic like that. And I was talking about child paid for parent the other day because I had sent a parcel to a friend abroad and it's been weeks to go there. And I hadn't gone for the most expensive payment. And I was like, oh, do you know what? Like with Bitcoin, you can just do this child pays for parent. So what I could do is, as this is traveling effectively, I could boost the amount of stampage that I've put on it to make sure that it would get there quicker.
And I think you've lost him. Just while he's coming back, I'll cover off the other way that you can do a child pays for parent transaction. So in the analogy where Max was paying me, and it was stuck in his transaction was stuck in the mempool and he didn't have a change output to be able to boost it. If I wanted to, I would be able to do the same. So I could take the unconfirmed output of his 1 million sats paying me, and I could spend that to myself to speed up the transaction again. Obviously, it would be me that's incurring those fees. So if I was a merchant selling something to Max, the chances are I'm not incentivized to do that. So it only really works that way if you're paying to a friend maybe, and you can sort of twist their arm to create that parent transaction. Max has just messaged me saying that his laptop's just died. So I'll probably pause there and wait for Max to edit this bit out.
Hey mate, we're back. My laptop just completely died on me. I have no idea why, but we're back. And I think we were basically through the updates. Did we have a couple more, or are we basically there?
Yeah, well, I just start by saying Magnet Hand strikes again. But yeah, the only The three things left to cover was, number one, there's a new Blockstream satellite been released. I'll just briefly cover over it. Basically, what it enables is that you can buy a, let me just see now, $500 satellite. It acts as a base station that you can chuck on your roof. It's got a Ethernet cable that comes off it, and you plug it into a Bitcoin node, and you can basically listen for block data from the Blockstream satellite without an internet connection. Great from a privacy perspective, because this block data is basically just being pumped out across the globe, and anybody who listens on the right channel, basically with one of these satellite base stations, you can basically just passively listen, receive all the block data at no sort of ongoing cost and in a very private way. The kicker here is that you can't actually broadcast transactions. It's sort of listen only, if you like. So if you were to use this as your setup, you would need a method of broadcasting your transaction through somebody else's node, which does have potentially some privacy risks, but there are options where you can do this through Tor and stuff. So probably, again, one for the more advanced user, but it's a good little tool to maybe if somebody's going mobile, might be a good option potentially.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And what's the reason that people can't broadcast? It's just, like you said, it's just that you're picking up the data that's accessible to anyone who is listening in the right format.
Yeah, basically, it's a satellite. It's a listen-only device, so it's just listening for the data that's been broadcast across the defined band that the Blockstream satellite uses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Last two pieces, education pieces. First one, Keep It Simple Bitcoin. You'll be familiar with his awesome video guides on pretty much everything. He's done a Bitcoin security guide. It's basically a start-to-finish guide on acquiring Bitcoin, setting up a hardware wallet, cold card, backing up your seed words onto Steel, creating an encrypted backup, linking that cold card to a software wallet, testing and verifying your backups. So for somebody who is not planning on transacting very often and is just going to sort of buy and hold, it's a really good all-encompassing video to get you from zero to hero.
Nice.
Last one, a bit of a self-shield, to be honest with you. I don't normally like to shield my own stuff on this podcast.
Shame.
But I put a lot of effort into this one. It took me fucking ages. New one on multisig. True to form, I've bought a new domain, multisig.guide, and it is a guide aimed at sort of intermediate or more advanced users. If you're a beginner, feel free to read it and try it on testnet. Don't sort of dive in and throw your complete stash into this. It's a guide to set up a 2 or 3 sovereign multisig using your own node, and a cold card, a Cobra Vault, and a new piece of kit on the market called a seed signer. It's pretty much a grassroots movement at the moment. I think you actually had him on the podcast, didn't you, last week? Was it, Max?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Just went
cool
live,
guy, actually.
Went live yesterday.
Rather than explain what seed signer is, I'll just say go and listen to that podcast and you'll have a much more eloquent description from the man himself. But yeah, it's a start to finish guide on setting up your a 2 or 3 multisig using Spectre, and then backing it up or testing your backups into Sparrow as well, which is also awesome. I love Sparrow. I think that's all we've got, Max. We've got to the end of the list, albeit with a brief break.
Technical issue. It wouldn't be the same show without that, I think. Before we move on, I wanted to ask about this multisig a little bit, because I know you've been really busy with it. I know it's been quite an undertaking to get it all done. What's your experience been like now that you've done it and you've written the guide? How are you feeling about multisig and what's been the experience?
Yeah, good question. So the setup process was easier than I thought. I'm glad I did it. It was an itch that I wanted to scratch, purely because a lot more people were sort of asking me about it, and my default answer before, although it hasn't really changed, was just use single sig, back it up on a metal C plate and use a passphrase and store it separately. My advice to 95% of people that come to me for advice is still that. Single sig is where it's at. Keep it simple, stupid. Is an old saying, but it still rings true now. But for the advanced user that kind of knows what they're doing and they're comfortable with the notion of signing devices, use Inspector, what an XPub is, the difference between an XPub and a private key, and how you would safely manage and back those up. It's a good option. But the problem is, and I cover this in the guide, is that multisig cures some problems and creates others. So it mitigates against the famous $5 wrench attack, where somebody was to break into your house, threaten you with a big steel pipe and said, give me your gold card or give me your seed backup or I'm going to cave your skull in. If you've just got a single sig and you don't use a passphrase and you give them that, then you can wave bye-bye to all your sats. Whereas if they were to do that and you've got a 2 or 3 multi-sig, all of the backups and signing devices are distributed anywhere you like, really, even if it's just a couple of miles apart, the likelihood of an attacker coming into your house, grabbing hold of you, taking one device and then marching you to the next device, the next location, wherever that may be, without you being able to raise some alarm to the fact that somebody's is attacking you, trying to steal from you, is pretty slim. Mm-hmm. So it really does mitigate against that threat. However, it also introduces massive amounts of complexity in terms of you've now got 3 devices and 3 backups to store somewhere safe. If you transact often, if you want to, it means that you're going to have to drive to 2 different locations to be able to sign the transaction to spend from. So if you're spending quite often, it's probably not going to be, it is going to be a massive headache for you. And you also have got like 3, instead of having one secure location to come up with, you've now got 3 secure locations to come up with, because if you keep them all in the same building, then it's kind of pointless in having a multi-sig, basically. So the obvious
and people can see you're spending from one.
Yes, yeah. Until we get Taproot, multi-sig on chain, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So again, if you've got UTXOs that are tied to your personal identity and they see that you're using multi-sig, and that data was leaked, might make you a bit more of a target to think, well, hang on, if they've got multi-sig, they're probably going to have a fair bit more than if they've just got a mobile wallet with a couple 100,000 sats on it or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, like I say, my advice to most people is still just stick with single sig and use a passphrase. That's what I'm still doing, and I've got no desire, even after going through the process of setting it up with these 3 signers and making the guide. I'm still not that enamored to make the big shift just yet. Mm-hmm. The other thing, the final thing to consider as well is inheritance. If you've got a 2 or 3 multi-sig that's geographically distributed, is your partner, if you got hit by a bus tomorrow and didn't make it, is your partner going to be able to find all those signing devices or backups, know what to do with them, to put them together, to be able to find the Bitcoin, and then know what to do with them to sign the transaction to be able to spend it? Mm-hmm. Well, if I speak for my wife, the answer is a big fat no. So something else to consider as well is that, is your Bitcoin going to die with you?
Good point. Yeah, it's interesting though. There's a lot about multi-sig that I really, really like, but for me at the moment, there's too much going on. But I'm sure these things are going to get easier, and a lot of these problems are going to be sorted. There's definitely some great parts of it, but it does seem like a lot, and I would be worried about losing my funds.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, great guide. I scanned my eyes over it, and it's very, very clear and nicely laid out with all the links in there. So definitely go and check it out.
Thank you, sir. Right, questions. Quite a few this week.
Yeah, we did actually.
Although I think we've covered a couple of them already, haven't we, with what we've been chatting about?
Yeah, we have. So I think we've basically covered this, but Mr. Crown has asked, to help roll out Taproot faster, do we need to update our nodes, or is this only the miners?
Yeah, so we covered it at length at the start. For the time being, it's just the miners, basically. Yeah. As things stand right now, the earliest that a user could have a direct impact to Taproot is by running the Luke Junior client, which the user activated side of that doesn't activate for another 18 months. So not really a lot the user can do at the moment. I mean, you can still run either client and sort of signal as a user if you like, but in terms of the direct impact of the protocol, there's nothing at the moment.
Next one is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Vindinius. Is that correct?
I think it is.
Yeah. I always miss the call for questions for any podcast you are on. For your upcoming one with Max, could you speak on the nuances and potential trade-offs with using the Sentinel watch only wallet with Samurai? I'll give a scenario now. Let's say after 50 mixes or something, rather than send to cold storage, I just set up Sentinel. What are the pros and cons for the show? Don't answer now.
It's a good scenario, and I know a lot of people in the Samurai community that do exactly that. They're not big proponents of hardware wallets, and they're more than comfortable with the security that an offline phone gives them. Using your scenario, what you essentially could do is just create your mixes in a Samurai wallet, and then you can take that Samurai wallet offline. You could set up you could import all of the XPubs into Samurai wallet. There's no private keys on the device, so you can kind of, it wouldn't be great for privacy, but you could leave that on your kitchen table if you wanted to. And the worst that would happen would be that somebody could open it and see how much Bitcoin you have, but they won't be able to spend anything. So yeah, pretty good option. Obviously, it's low cost. It's just a phone app. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. The probably a bit more tinfoil hat nuanced approach would be the fact that because Samurai Whirlpool requires you to sign, it's a hot wallet basically. So if you were storing long term, there would be people out there that would say, well, yes, it's offline now, but it's not truly cold storage because those private keys were once on a internet connected device. And who knows, somewhere in the future, somebody might be able to somehow be able to find your private keys because it was connected to the internet. If I'm being honest, it's never going to happen. But a lot of people like to have their cold storage on a device whose private keys have never ever touched the internet, like a cold card or something like that. But I do know a lot of people that take the exact approach that he's just taken, and they just take that offline. They cancel or they sort of remove all the private keys from Whirlpool, the graphical user interface and the command line interface if they were using one, and they're more than happy to keep it offline and Sentinel, and then they just have their seed words stamped into a seed plate so that if in the future they want to spend, they can just recover it into a new Samurai wallet and they're away again, they're back online.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Another one which I think basically has been answered already, but it's from MTC. I heard Gladstein mention cross-sig, if I recall correctly, in his rip with Preston Pish. Would love to know more if it's on your radar.
Yeah, so he's referring to cross-input signature aggregation. I always struggle to say that one, which, we covered it at length at the start, so hopefully we've already answered his question.
Cool. What else have we got? Mr. Crown. Oh, here we are. Richard, will you dive deep into signing devices, hardware wallets, seed signer perhaps? I'm not sure. We sort of run a little bit over. We try and keep these under an hour and a half. I'm not sure quite where we are now, but I'm not sure quite what he means by deep dive into them. I'm not sure whether he's asking which ones we recommend or what he's asking here.
Yeah, so a couple of things. He asked this on the 1st of May. I dropped my multi-sig guide on the 2nd of May, so hopefully there's a lot of content in my multi-sig guide that will answer his question. Although I know who this chap is, and he's the guy that has kindly sent me a number of 3D printed parts, one of which was the case for my seed signer, which is a project I'm absolutely loving, and I would urge people to go and listen to the podcast that you had with him last week.
Yeah, I spoke to him the other day as well on the seed signer community on Telegram. Seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah. As is Richard. He's like I say, he's sent me quite a few 3D printed parts, and I've got some more on the way actually. So I just wanted to give him a big shout out, and perhaps it's quite a big piece diving into signing devices. So perhaps one for a later date, maybe.
Okay, maybe we can cover it next time round, go a little bit deeper, and maybe he can ask again so that he's a bit clearer on exactly what he wants to know.
Yeah, works for me.
Cool. All right. Anything else we haven't covered? Anything you're working on at the moment you can tease, or are we basically ready to wrap up?
I think we're ready to wrap up. I'm no more guides for me for a while. That multi-sig one took it out of me. I need a break. So maybe there might be something next month, maybe. But I've honestly got nothing on the radar at the moment.
Cool. All right, mate. Well, good to speak to you. And for everyone listening, I hope that was helpful. And just reach out to us if you have any other questions for next month, and we'll go through them.
Cheers, Max. Pleasure as always.
Cool. All right, mate. Bye-bye.